Hello and welcome to the DSP Leaders World Forum 2021. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV, and coming up now is our Solutions and Strategies Roundtable, where we'll be discussing strategic options for telco cloud deployments. So, where should telcos host and run their workloads? Private clouds or public clouds or both? Also, what are the implications of their choices? And how should vendors help their telco partners to develop workable architectures? Put simply, just what are the most viable options for telco cloud deployments? There's plenty to discuss, and thankfully we have a great panel of guests to help us find some answers. So let me introduce Yves Bellego, who is Director of European Network Strategy at Orange. Paul Grønsund, who is Senior Research Scientist at Telenor Research and also Vice Chair of the ETSI Open Source MANO ISG. Beth Cohen, SDN Product Strategies at Verizon. Danielle Royston, CEO and Founder of TelcoDR. And Pieter Veenstra, who is Senior Manager Product Development, Security and Routing for NetNumber. Hello everyone, good to see you all. Thank you very much for taking part in our roundtable. So we put together some discussion points that are based on input from our TelecomTV viewers. So here's the first point. Are private telco clouds simply no longer viable, either in terms of technology, ability, or confidence on the part of telcos? And is the only logical solution for them to partner with the hyperscalers? Yves, let me throw that first question to you, but I suspect that we'll all want to have an answer. But Yves, I'll let you address that one first.
Yes, thank you, Guy. Just to maybe as an introduction, in fact, that the private telco clouds get interest so much by many people and by the hyperscalers and others, that is just, in fact, good news. It's always good news that a lot of people show interest in the solutions to be provided to the networks and to the customers, because at the end, this is what we need. We need to have various solutions available so that we can build products and services that are at the same time provide low cost delivery of services, and also that can evolve, that can be versatile, that we can upgrade and make them evolve. So the good news, it's just a good news that everyone gets interest in that. Now, I would answer that your question is a bit, in one sense, a bit provocative, in the sense that we have not yet, to be honest, finished to deploy our private telco cloud. So yes, things are moving fast, but there are many transformations that are ongoing in parallel. And what we need, in fact, is not that much to have one personal, our own cloud or not our own cloud. What we need is just a solution that helps us to move towards the services and the networks of tomorrow, but to do that in a step-by-step way, because there are a lot of transformations ongoing at the moment. So maybe not answering precisely as you would like, but this is our view at the moment.
Yves, you've discovered our secret, which is to be provocative in order to play the devil's advocate role here and encourage a varied discussion, because I know we're going to have a few viewpoints here. But let me first of all turn to Paul. Do you think this is an either-or choice here, and that the choice is firmly in the partner with the public hyperscalers camp?
I mean, first of all, I would like to say that the hyperscalers, they do have great solutions, right? And we have started using these solutions in, for instance, in edge deployments, such as for private networks and with different vertical industries. But I think still there is room for both. And I think it's also important to highlight that we shouldn't confuse hyperscalers' cloud technologies with the questions of private versus public cloud. As you know, I mean, you might deploy a private cloud using a hyperscaler's cloud technology. And if you look a bit into what we do in the mobile operators networks, specifically around virtualizing and cloudifying the mobile core deployments, of course, we might consider deploying the full mobile core and related services in the public cloud. But there are some different factors to consider, and thinking about three of them, like first, I mean, we have the performance gap. That has been an issue for some time, but that is catching up and seems to be overcome. Then I'm talking about like data throughput and so forth. The second concern is, of course, the regulatory aspects around it. So we need to deploy the mobile networks in the countries where we operate and so forth. And then there's also in specific countries, there are other regulatory concerns. And third, I mean, expense-wise, because there's a lot of traffic flowing into the clouds. And, you know, as an alternative, you might also deploy a private cloud using the hyperscalers technology. So you might take that, say, if it's Azure Stack or if it's Amazon or something, you might deploy that locally in a way. And the cost model compared to other private cloud technologies, it's kind of, it's not very different. But I think that the real benefit of starting to use those the hyperscaler cloud technologies, in addition to that it's a great technology, is also the fact that you can get more innovation running. I mean, there's APIs and services out there that you could use in the Telco Cloud, and that brings a lot of value, I would say. So, but still, I mean, we are operating the private clouds that we have deployed, but I'm not saying it's an either or. I think there is room for both, and especially also now when we start moving more and more into edge cloud deployments.
Yeah, and you made a very good point there. There are more public clouds than just the hyperscalers. Beth, you're the third operator on our panel, so let me come to you first before I introduce our other guests. We've been rumbled. This isn't a binary choice, is it? So what's the state? What's the current recommended state of play?
It is definitely not a binary state. There's a place for the public cloud within our ecosystem. There's a place for our private clouds. As was previously mentioned, regulatory issues become very significant. I know that we've not been able to deploy certain services within the public cloud hyperscalers, specifically related to US-based regulatory issues. So that is definitely something to be considered. Another aspect, of course, is that not all the services that we are deploying really work within the public cloud framework, particularly around networking services. Now, where we need to tune the clouds to specifically for those networking workloads. So all in all, I don't foresee anything other than hybrid for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Beth. Well, let's turn now to Danielle, because I suspect even the prospect of a hybrid environment might be too much for you.
Yeah, you know, I am kind of the extremist, I think, on the panel today in terms of my views around public cloud, and I definitely look at this from a sort of 10-year, sort of long-term perspective. That I believe public cloud is an unstoppable mega trend. It's coming to telco. I think telco needs to start to experiment with it and start to embrace it and learn how to use the public cloud to your maximum advantage and use this advantage to beat your competitors. I mean, just last year, the three hyperscalers combined invested $97 billion in CapEx. And I think that telcos could absolutely leverage that, leverage their massive investment for your business. I think the views on the panel are probably right. Like when you look at it right now at this moment, is networking ready? Is every single application ready to go? No. But I think you sort of couple it with the speed that telco moves at with this and compare that to the speed of the hyperscalers. And I think telco is moving much more slowly than the hyperscalers are moving. So bet on that technology, anticipate it, getting it to a point where you can really use it and get moving, because telco moves much more slowly than the hyperscalers do. So bet on it, the technology to bet on.
Thank you, Danielle. And Pieter, is it too soon to write off the private telco cloud approach?
Yeah, it will. I agree with the previous speakers that there will be a hybrid solution for some time. Operators cannot move their existing services when there are no solutions there. So we see a lot of questions from customers coming how to deal with that. But definitely the door is open to these new developments. We are also using it for our own services and our data services, and it really helps us to make the services more speedy available to our customers, but also to have more connectivity in an easy way. However, what was being said by two of the previous speakers, regulatory requirements are becoming more tighter, particularly about the critical infrastructure, where you see that the regulators are now kicking in, and that is not avoiding, but it will definitely slow down this process to some extent, because the operators have to look into the conditions. And myself, I'm also the chairman of a task force in the GSMA about 5G roaming, where also outsourcing is part of the discussion. And there you see that there's a lot of uncertainty in the market for the moment. And that needs to be consolidated first before we see the big move to public cloud.
No, interesting observations. Thank you, and thank you all for that. Yves, if telcos do partner with the hyperscalers, and we are seeing this already, is there a risk that will simply accelerate the ambitions of those global cloud providers into enterprise via edge? Is there a risk that it leaves telcos out in the cold for a while, or is the alternate true in a way that maybe, especially some of the smaller telcos, tier 2s and 3s, they may see it as a chance to basically catch up, to basically create time, create some allow them to create some expertise in cloud technology that they don't already have?
Well, in a sense, I would say that the opposing the telcos, the hyperscalers, is a bit theoretical. We come from different worlds, and basically our job was building mast, digging, doing civil work, building fiber, and on that part of the business, they are not competing us. On the other part, on the very large data centers, computing power, we are not competing with them. So this is a bit not that much of a true question. The point, whatever we can benefit from their solutions, then we already start. As you said, there are already a lot of people who are building services using hyperscaler solutions. What will be the impact on enterprise? I would say in a large sense that is already done. In fact, if we talk from Orange, we have already partnerships with various ones, and our competitors, that's the same. Partnerships with between different operators and different hyperscalers have already been signed to address the enterprise market. So I would not expect, in fact, what the evolution that we will have on the private telco cloud to so much change the enterprise market that is already evolving quite a lot, and all the new offers being built with hybrid cloud solutions managed by different entities are already, in fact, provided on the market.
Yeah, thanks, Yves. And Beth, it's already been mentioned on the panel that the public cloud players, especially the hyperscalers, have a lot of investment in their infrastructure. There's a lot of innovation that they're putting in there. There's a lot of developers working with them, alongside them. This is something that surely the telcos can leverage, no matter what size of telco you are.
Oh, I would agree with that statement, that we can and do leverage the hyperscalers. Telcos are really good at networks, obviously. The hyperscalers are really good at delivering compute and storage and memory. But those are, as Yves said, very, very different platforms and that are used in very, very different ways. But obviously an application and the service delivery, particularly toward the edge, requires both. So we really need to work together with the hyperscalers so that we can deliver the services that our customers downstream, both the hyperscaler as well as the telco customers, and of course they're usually the same customer, can in fact deliver what they want, which is applications to their end users. I don't see, but again, I don't see the telcos giving up our private clouds. I mean, we're not competing with the hyperscalers at all. I mean, because those private clouds, we're not selling those services. They're not compute services. They're I view our private clouds as our infrastructure, where we're building our networking services on top of that infrastructure to deliver to our customers. Are we moving some of those services into the hyperscalers? I'd say that's been a mixed bag for all the telcos. I know, some of us have moved some workloads successfully, other workloads have not been so successful. And the other elephant in the room, of course, is the cloud native applications. Remember, our network services right now, they're legacy services. We only recently moved them to be virtual over the last 5-10 years. And, we have to make that next leap into containerized, and we're not there yet.
Paul, is there a case that, and it's alluding to what Beth has just said, that there are certain workloads, telco workloads, that are completely more suited to private clouds and private telco clouds, and staying where they are, and that it's perhaps not the right question to ask to say, can we move everything across to the public cloud?
Yes, I think, looking at what we have in the private cloud and up until now, and what we can put in the public cloud and what we do put in the public cloud, it's pretty much the same type of workloads running in virtual machines and now moving more into cloud native with containers and so forth. So basically those can be deployed both places. I think what we have seen over time is that some years back we needed to have some more specific acceleration and all of that in order to be able to run at the performance we needed. But I think that is catching up. I think, as I also mentioned previously, the main challenge would be more into regulatory aspects in order to, where should be allowed to run the data, who is able to log in and access the data, and so forth. And that is putting some restrictions on where to run them, at least up until now. Though, it can be possible to use hyperscaler cloud technologies, as I said, and deploy them in a private setting, and then you could still use them without having to put them into a public cloud running in some other country or being operated by someone else. So I guess there will be room for that going forward. And I think definitely, it's I do believe in the use of hyperscalers cloud technologies, and we see a lot of benefit in doing it. And I think they also see a lot of benefit in working with the operators in order to approach these enterprises and all the new opportunities that come with 5G and everything around that. So I think both the hyperscalers and the operators have invaluable assets coming into the play here. And together we will bring innovation, and that will of course benefit the ones that we want to deliver to, which are the customers, the enterprises.
Thank you. Pieter, as Beth suggested, taking full advantage of telco cloud deployments is really only going to be possible if we can port the existing services we've got to cloud solutions. A lot of these legacy services, which, as Beth said, are not so long ago only just been virtualized.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we as a small vendor are really looking into that as a specialist vendor. And we see a lot of traction now for the cloud native type of solutions, that legacy services can be ported to the cloud environment. And that movement is quite difficult to make if you don't have the expertise and if you don't have a solution that oversees the different technology generations. Imagine that a lot of the services legacy services are still bringing a lot of money to the customers, to the operators. So they don't like to lose that. But on the other hand, they also know that staying as it is, with people that are retiring with knowledge and other lifetime issues, they cannot just be silent and sitting down. They have to move, and cloud native also for existing services definitely the path forward to innovate. For instance, number 7 is still a signaling system of 30 years ago, is still around and still growing business we see for that. So that amplifies that you need to look into the existing legacy services as well. It's not only the new things that can benefit. Also, the old things should benefit from that.
Danielle, do you want to come in with this?
Of course, I always have something to say about the public cloud. But I think there's a danger here where people are thinking about the public cloud as a place, right? You know, we're talking about using words like port. And I think what really makes the public cloud so special is the software they give you. I mean, it's almost practically free when you compare to other things. The ability to use their software for your advantage. And so when you move an application over the public cloud, you can't just throw it into a Kubernetes container and say, yeah, we're running in the public cloud. You really have to refactor that application, right? Can you reduce costs by eliminating the use of an Oracle database or a SQL Server database? Can you pull in machine learning and AI components and analytic components? And when you start to think of the public cloud as these Lego blocks that can really add all this capability and speed to your business, your ability to add new revenue very quickly, is just a completely different way of thinking that the public cloud gives you. And I think we get into trouble when we just talk about, porting or throwing it into a container, because I think what ends up happening is you pick the lowest common denominator of technology. You're not picking the best technology for the job. And so I really think you need to start thinking about rewriting these applications and having a completely different approach using the public cloud. Regulatory issues can be overcome, right? You'd be really surprised when you start to dig into it and look country by country. What are the telco rules of what data can move where? Almost every country you can use the 3 hyperscalers, right? They're close enough. They're building new data centers, new regions every year. I think Amazon's adding 3. And with every new data center, that represents $3 billion of investment. They built 3 availability zones into every single data center. I mean, their resiliency completely tops any telcos. And I know that's kind of scary, but you should leverage that, right? They're giving you so much free plumbing that not only use it for the plumbing, which is what people think they should use it for, but use it for the software they give you and how that can help you build better relationships and better experiences with your subscribers, because that's what it's all about, right? It's not necessarily all about the network. Really, at the end of the day, it's a relationship you guys have, telcos have, with subscribers. And what are we doing to improve that relationship and get more revenue and make that an awesome experience? And the public cloud really enables that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've received talking points from our audience, so we really ought to get onto a couple more of these points before we close the panel. And an area that's getting more and more interest from our viewers is about hosting and sharing. Now, look, hosting could be a lucrative revenue stream for DSPs, and if a telco can't build out its own data centers, then maybe it could partner with others. So perhaps the concept of network sharing could be extended to include telco cloud platforms. Yves, have you any thoughts about extending this sharing concept to also incorporate telco cloud platforms, perhaps?
Probably at Orange, we are not the most advanced on that track, because in fact we do build our own data centers, and in fact we have enough customer base, whether it is in Europe or in Africa, so that we build our own infrastructure, including in data centers. But yes, this is the asset part of it is something that is worth looking at being shared or being outsourced. That's not, in a sense, so much different from the fiber networks that we built or that we share, or to the mast on the mobile network. So that's a valid point. But again, on that part, this is open, and the way we have chosen until now, at least within Orange, is to build our own data centers.
Thank you, Yves. Let me ask the same to Paul. Because telcos come in different shapes and sizes, and they've got different priorities and different investment priorities. So is the idea of shared telco cloud platforms perhaps appealing to other telcos?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, at least in some domains of the Telco Cloud. I mean, we have a long history, or quite long history, of sharing networks, everything from cabinets to like towers, antennas, transport networks, and so forth. So it's definitely a good thing, right? And I think at least when we move more and more into deployment of edge cloud around in the countries. I mean, if you have a market with 5 operators and everyone builds a lot of edge cloud data centers, that would be a lot of infra. And I think it could benefit all to have some sort of sharing. And then we can look into many type of sharing agreements. If it's about space, if it's about the compute, about different things, right? Even running on the same infrastructure as a service, as an example. So I believe there's definitely room for that. I think maybe it's a bit early, but I think that's definitely something to be looked more into.
We have a very forward-looking audience at TelecomTV. They look way ahead into the future. But that's interesting about the different types and different forms that sharing could take. Beth, what do you think about this?
The telcos have been peering for years, you're right, so we're very comfortable with that. I think that the hyperscalers have not. So, the forays that we've gotten into, with wavelength, which I know, Verizon has partnered with AWS to deploy wavelength, and others are doing that as well. I think how those partnerships work out is still a work in progress. So it's not really appearing in the same way that the telcos are used to peering. And again, it has to do with the different perspective of and the strengths of the telcos versus the hyperscalers. Hyperscalers, are used to, a number of centralized data centers. They control everything. The peering basically consists of some network connections. And that's, of course, not how telcos work. We have to peer because our services have to cross each other's infrastructures. So, we don't overbuild. We do use each other's infrastructure. The hyperscalers are not used to that. So I think that, again, is a work in progress to figure out exactly how those relationships are going to work out.
And Beth, related to this, if you can't share amongst your telco peers, what about neutral hosts? Do neutral hosts have a part to play in telcos' future networking strategies around the cloud?
Well, I think so. I mean, Equinix has been greatly successful in that, hitting that sweet spot of being the neutral host that allows the peering to happen at a neutral data center. Now, I know Paul mentioned edge, which is a whole different kettle of fish. The peering at the hubs. There's 50 or 60 hubs around the globe. But peering at the edge brings up an entire different set of issues. Instead of a couple hundred sites, you're dealing with thousands of sites. And I don't want to get into the debate of what's the edge, extreme edge, telco edge, regional edge, because that gets even messier. But the further away you get from the core, the more sites you have, and then the peering becomes much more complicated. So I know I've been involved in some of the GSMA work around determining some of how to hand off between the providers. I mean, that's very important work. How do you have an edge service that is crossing between telco providers and the hyperscalers? I mean, everybody's all involved in this.
Thank you, Beth. Another talking point that was raised by our viewers was the support that vendors should give to their telco customers. Do vendors need to develop telco cloud blueprints and create multi-vendor partnerships to help the telcos and provide them with meaningful and workable architectures, do we think? Paul, maybe I could just start by asking you about your views on that.
I mean, that would be good. And I mean, vendors do that already. I think at least I've seen a lot of it. But I still think there's a lack of such blueprints involving like multi-vendor partnership blueprints with like all the big players together. So I think that's maybe something missing. So I mean, this is important to allow interoperability and ease of deployment and so forth. And we all know that in a standardized world where everything is perfect, then it could be plug and play, but it isn't. And such blueprints, they help indeed. But I also think looking into other forums, for instance, like in open source projects, like where I'm representing the open source MANO project, where we have the OSM ecosystem consisting of a wide set of partners where you can have a more plug and play fashion. That is helping a lot. So, but it's always a question who is responsible for doing that. Is it the vendors? Is it the operators? Is it other for us? So, but such blueprints indeed help.
Thank you. And Pieter, you wanted to come in on this one as well. Do we think we need to devote more time to creating workable blueprints for telcos?
Yeah, well, that is already happening to some extent. We are used to that already today, that we are partnering with a lot of other vendors and to incorporate in their solutions or integrate on another way via interfaces. But also what I would like to explain is that with the enhancements now from a security perspective and the worries about critical infrastructure and data protection, that the industry is also being asked by the regulations and also for their own benefit to have certification programs. And there also the constellation between the different entities that are involved becomes into play. And there the standardization offers some frameworks and also test procedures in order to have a certification of the products to give the guarantee that those are secure and that the data is in a way protected. And you also have to imagine that the newest platforms for 5G, it is a multi-layer technology platform. So you have different software, but also different hardware that is being layered on top of it. And it is not just from one party. It is common practice that it is multi-party, multi-vendor solutions.
Thank you, Pieter. And Danielle?
Yeah, I think on this topic, we need to maybe even look outside of our industry to other industries and notice that there's been very little adoption of what I would call web scale software applications. I think that every telco is solving the same problems, each of them individually over and over again. And there's room in our industry to start to standardize not only the architecture, but all the way to the actual software. Remove the need to make so many individual technical decisions, and serve up software that allows telcos to focus on their business and less about thinking about the entire stack. And so that's been our heritage, right? We saw, everyone's picking different servers, different operating systems, connections, then now the software layer. And so start to standardize that and create a thin layer of the business logic that really drives the value of the telco. I'm not sure people are saying, oh, all of your software technology architecture decisions are super differentiating. What differentiates you in the marketplace are the plans and subscriber options you put out there, how fast you can deploy, the next latest network, and do you have the funding to support that? And less about all of this plumbing we're wrestling over year after year. Should we do an upgrade? We can't do an upgrade because our stack is so complicated, and so our speed of change and our speed of innovation is slowed down because of the technical decisions we've made. And so we need to simplify that and standardize that, I think, all the way up to the software layer.
Thank you, Danielle. Beth, continuing this theme here, what do you expect from your vendor partners, and how can they and how do they help you with your move to Telco Cloud?
So what we expect is that they follow and contribute to the standards and the open source projects that are getting us to, as Danielle said, a more uniform software platform. But it's not just software, of course. So, telcos are driven by performance SLAs, which are over, over LAN networks, right? So, or over WAN networks. And so we need and expect our vendors to be able to demonstrate that they can deliver the performance that we need to, deliver to our customers. And I know I said this at a LFN conference last year. When the network is slow because the firewall is choking, they're still going to call Verizon.
Yes, same question, Yves, to you. What do you expect from your vendors and your partners? Are blueprints and plugfests part of the solution here? Because collaboration has always been critically important for telecoms.
Yes, we keep, in fact, the same underlying goals, which is delivering reliable connectivity to our customers. And one difficult point, by the way, is how to deliver new services, especially on the residential market. A lot has been already done on the enterprise market, but on the residential market, basically, in fact, the way we deliver mobile service, whether that is done on using mobile packet core that is virtualized or not, is not really of much importance for our customers. So what we expect from our suppliers is to help us progress on the route towards new networks that in fact still deliver the same quality of service, and that is a real challenge to still be capable of delivering the resilience, the scaling up, the management of the overall level of traffic, all that while deploying the new capabilities, the new technologies, and still relying on networks that are built in different bricks coming from different suppliers. So keeping interoperability, open interfaces, and whether that comes from standardization bodies, from open source communities, from a Plugfest or the type of manifestations, all that in my mind is pretty open, but we need to keep the goal to have openness in our networks.
Yes, no matter what, we still need to keep our eye on the business drivers, and as you correctly say, openness and the open telco is so important moving forward. Well, with that, we have to draw our discussion to a close. Thank you all very much indeed for participating and sharing your views and opinions. Now, if you're watching this on day 2 of our DSP Leaders World Forum, then don't forget to send us any questions you have on this subject, and we'll try and answer them in our live after show program later today. Otherwise, take a look at all the sessions from this year's World Forum. We are making them available for on-demand viewing throughout this week. Today's focused on enhancing the ecosystem, but we're covering 4 other important topics as part of this year's event. Well, as you can see, we have a great lineup of speakers this year, so please do keep watching and get in touch with us and let us know your views. For now though, thanks for watching and goodbye.